Meeting at 7 o'clock. Welcome to the regular meeting of the planning board. This is a public meeting and it's being video and audio recorded for cable broadcast. It's a Zoom meeting and the Zoom ID and passcode is on our website. Would you all like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to confirm our next meeting date, February 13th.
So, I'm sorry, correction, it's February 15th.
February 15th. Next agenda item, item 4A, review, discuss, act, Jeffrey P. Rodriguez, 2040 County Street, map 17, lot 304, site plan review. Before, sir.
Good evening, folks. Mark Rodriguez from Analysis and Design Engineering here. This is a follow-up meeting from your previous planning board meeting. The board had requested a reprieve, if you will, for me to come back today to discuss the matter of citing a structure at the property located at 2040 County Street. I know that at that time it was more of, you wanted some time to review it in terms of some of the aesthetic elements of it. And I understand that there's also some discussion we should have of the structure will be called a temporary versus permanent structure. So
Yes, sir.
I'll defer to your discussion and follow your lead.
Okay, sir. First off, I'd like to say, I'm sorry that we had to hold off for another 2 weeks, and I wanted to do a little homework on this,
Yes, sir.
which I'm glad I did, because according to our bylaws, the definition of a temporary and a permanent structure is, it's different. So on your paperwork, you had temporary, and I'll read you. Temporary structure is a structure without any foundation or footing to be removed within a 12-month time period. Said structure shall conform to the requirements of the table of the dimensional requirements and shall receive a permit from the building inspector. So your building's gonna be on a footing, correct?
There's a slab in between,
Slab.
but it's actually sitting on the shipping containers, which are on the ground.
Yes, sir. And it's gonna be up for more than a year, correct?
The intent was to keep the building there so as to meet the needs of the tenant on the property, which presumably might exceed a 12-month
Yes, sir.
period, yes.
So just as long as you're good with it being a permanent structure, we're good with it.
Okay? I think it's reasonable to say that my use of the word temporary did not show up in the site plan for review or the application, but in my cover letter where I was addressing the requirements of the site plan itself, I did use the term several times. So it was my terminology and that intent not conforming to this definition of temporary structure, but more a temporary structure that was suited for the tenant's needs to conduct his business on the property. So I think that's a little definition difference that we had with
We're
it.
very sorry if we held you up, by 2 weeks, but we wanted to do our due diligence and make sure, because once this structure goes up and other people see it, they're gonna want it too. And you can't blame somebody, for running a business and doing what they need to do to keep things moving. And we're
Okay.
not here to prevent any of that.
Okay?
So, as far as the aesthetics, just so you know, there are residents that live in the area, and they will complain if things don't look right. But that's not our job to enforce that. You can paint it any color you want.
Yep.
We're not here to tell you what color to paint it.
Yep. But the intent
But,
is,
you know,
it's to paint the
You wanna keep
structure.
the neighborhood happy, you wanna make the
Sure.
town look nice, so.
Sure, we'd
you
like
know,
to make it look
And
nice
I'm sure you're gonna
too.
do the right thing, because I drove down there several times last week, just to talk to somebody, and I ran into one of the fellows that drives a truck there or something. I talked to him, but, I noticed that the yard was picked up and clean, and everything looked very organized. So I was very happy.
Good, good. And I know all that work was in concert with the order of conditions and conservation, so all of that area
I
was
did
pretty
talk
much.
to conservation also, I talked to the building inspector. I wanted to make sure we got this right.
I'm good with that. So A building permit would be requested upon the construction of the building, and after, if it exceeds our 12 months, presuming it would be, if the building's gonna come down, i.e. the tenant is gone or no longer has the need for that, there will be a demolition permit associated, as there was for a building permit to put it up, a demolition permit to take it away.
And let the tax assessor know too, because they will tax you on that.
I certainly would presume that to be the case.
Right. Do any of my colleagues have anything?
No?
No? Okay, then, I will entertain a motion to approve the project for Jeffrey Rodriguez at 2040 County Street.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's 3 ayes. All set, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
that. My pleasure.
Okay, next item would be 4A2, FY '24 proposed budget. I did review it earlier in the day. Anybody else have a chance to look at it?
I read it when I got here.
Yeah, I will say, Carrie, I really didn't get a chance to talk to you about the budget. But, you know, the cost of everything has gone up. Did you take that into consideration?
I do,
Okay, so do you think you have enough money to operate for the next fiscal year?
I do.
Okay, professional and technical, I noticed that we did not use an awful lot of money as of yet. But,
There's been
going forward,
several
we got some
bills.
big stuff coming up.
We do, in anticipation of some things that are coming up, for a couple of appeals that are coming up and legals, and actually I just had some legal bills go through as well, so the balance that you see on your sheet right now is not the true
Okay.
balance as of today.
And I'm sure we're gonna move some numbers around between now and town meeting, after you meet with,
I'm sure
FinCom.
there's gonna be some discussions, because it was asked to do a zero balance budget this year. But as you know, there's no way to predict, our legal line, because there's no way to predict if we're gonna have an appeal or not, so if we need legal fees,
now, I know you're
Type of
in the
thing.
union, so they're waiting for the union, contract.
correct,
So you
so
can put your raise in, but you haven't put in anything for us either.
I did not, because I was gonna allow you guys to discuss and make your determination from there tonight.
Okay, well, I don't know how anybody else feels, but the planning board members have not gotten a raise for a long time. Long time. We were denied a $43 raise last year by the FinCom, $43, barely enough to take my wife to Burger King. I said that to them, and I'm gonna say it again. I think that's funny, Nancy.
$43.
I would like to propose an 8.7% raise for the planning board. That is the cost of living allowance that was given to everyone on Social Security this year. 8.7%. Now, whether my colleagues want to go with that or not, that's fine, but that's what I'm recommending. Because we have not gotten a raise in years. Our workload has increased tremendously. I get so many emails, I'm tired of looking. All right, but there they are every day. All right, we got packets full of material. And I hope somebody from FinCom is watching this, because this is exactly how I feel. I enjoy the work I do for the town of Dayton. I see the money that they're giving other people, and they like to beat up on us little guys. I'm about sick of that. Okay, so I propose an 8.7% raise. That's a cost of living adjustment.
Okay.
I mean, we can discuss that. I had one other item that I wanted to also bring up, since we're
Sure.
reviewing it all. It just seems like year over year, we seem to be rather underfunded in public hearings, or we at least exceed it. And we're already halfway through this year and gone through most of the money. Is that not better to raise that, or is that generally handled in the past just between line item transfers that other?
Correct.
Okay.
It's generally a transfer, only because typically, the planning board may do one or two publications for a public hearing, it really depends.
What do we
We
anticipate?
usually budget for one public hearing, but then we can move some money in the line items that allows us, just in case, if we end up having two public hearings, so that the money is there, let's put it that way.
It does seem like we have lots of projects in the works that by next year we may have more than one public hearing. It just
We might,
might make sense to
if you
double
wanna
that,
increase it.
and even if it means taking money away from another like technical, but to make that more reasonable, you know.
Yep, I can certainly do that if you wanna do, so the public hearings, it was budgeted at
So
700. So, and it's hard to guess what a publication's gonna be, cause it changes all the time. And they go by lines, so the newspaper, they go by a line count, so it really depends on how long your legal advertisement's gonna be, which is hard to judge. If you wanna, I don't know what you're suggesting.
I would suggest something around like what we spent in 22, like at least 1,200, but
Okay,
that would be a recommendation. I don't know if that's a typical year over year. You know, we wind up spending an extra 500 or so more than we thought we would.
yeah, I would, I'm trying to remember FY '22, what went on, I can't remember, but,
Yeah.
yeah, if that's what you think, more than happy.
You think, Chris?
So if we, I guess, are we voting to revisit the budget and kinda maybe factor in Woody's recommendation as well as the legal hearing line?
I'm sorry?
Would we just vote to revisit and look at both Woody's recommendation and both issues, or do we have to vote for each one? I guess is my question.
So, what you would do is you would make a vote to recommend the line items that you're changing, and then you can say, then vote to accept the budget as discussed and presented, or as amended, and then vote to approve the budget, and then it can be submitted.
Okay.
So you can make whatever recommendations that you're changing, you make the vote on that. So for example, the public hearings, you make a motion to amend from the 700 to, I'm sorry, you said 1,200. And then same thing with the salary, if that's what you so choose. And then you can make the vote to approve the budget.
I think I got all that. So you wanna make it 1,100?
12, well,
1,200?
in 22 it was 1,200. I don't know if that was typical that year or not, but
Right.
Yeah, I
So
think-
where do you wanna go?
1,200?
1,200?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion to increase the public hearings line to $1,200.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Sorry.
All in-
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'll make another motion to, put in for 8.7% raise for the planning board members.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That completes the budget process for us for this
Nope.
evening?
No. Now you have to do a motion to approve the budget,
Okay? I'll
because
make
you
a
want to
motion.
approve the whole budget
I'll
now.
entertain a motion to approve the budget as requested.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 ayes. We all set with that, Carrie?
I believe so. I will need you to come in tomorrow, once I amend those numbers.
Yeah,
I'll need you
I'm gonna be in
yeah,
tomorrow morning to do, my other budget and so.
got it.
Alrighty. Now we'll move to agenda item 4B. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for Forest Hills Estate Special Permit Conservation Subdivision, map 3, lot 28, 33, and 78.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, members of the public and the planning board. My name is Joshua Glass. I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicants. I'm joined this evening by Ed Brennan of Brennan Recupero, as well as Jason Youngquist and Kyle of Outback Engineering. With your permission, I'd like to have them provide the initial engineering review with respect to the revisions to the plan that took place. And thereafter, I will speak on a few legal items. We are reserving our rights as to the fact that we believe the special permit was covered by and incorporated into the settlement agreement, notwithstanding our desire to move forward this evening. Jason and Kyle will share with you this revised plan. This plan incorporates the comments of the planning board and its peer review agents, the Conservation Commission and its peer review agents, the comments provided by the Stormwater Subcommittee, comments provided by the North Dayton Fire District and the Sewer Commission were previously responded to, but are incorporated into this compiled response. You should have received a written response as well, which again compiles all comments and responses of the various boards, entities, and peer review agents. And as to the engineering, as I said, I will let Jason from Outback Engineering take over, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Just, if I were to repeat myself once, I would like to speak following the conclusion of the engineering portion of this.
Thank you.
How you doing? Jason Youngquist from Outback Engineering, here with Kyle Devenish. She's gonna work the screen over there for any online viewers, and if we need to go between different plans and other things. Just a refresher, this is a subdivision, conservation subdivision that came from a settlement agreement that I'm sure Josh will talk about in a little bit. It's 135 lots, 35 of which are age restricted. As you can see, there's a number of roadways that are proposed. Existing conditions right now, it's a wooded parcel. Ridge runs right through here, pitches towards the wetland in that direction, in that direction. Been before conservation, or in the process of going before conservation. We've been a few times, and we'll be going again to deal with any conservation issues for any work in the resource areas, buffer zones. So for this subdivision, as I said, it came from a settlement agreement that laid out the roadways and the lots. And then what we had to do from that was to take that layout that was agreed upon and make it conform to stormwater management regulations as they are today. So the design drainage systems, there's 8 infiltration basins. There's low impact development with the use of roof drain infiltrators for the houses. And so all the runoff from the roofs will be getting recharged directly to the
Gentleman
groundwater.
can't hear you, sir. Could you speak up a little?
Okay. And then with the 8 infiltration basins, all the runoff from the roadways and anything will be caught in the roadway with Cape Cod berm, taken to the infiltration basins where it's treated, and then stormwater would be recharged to the groundwater, and some will be released to the wetlands. So we've gone through extensive calculations to make sure it meets the stormwater management policy, to make sure there's no increase in stormwater runoff volume and flow rate off-site to the wetlands, to abutting properties, to Forest Street, or anything like that. And again, these plans and drainage report have been extensively reviewed by your review engineer, Green Affiliates. Conservation has their own review engineer, Beta Engineering, who's also been looking at the plans. North Dayton Fire District has their own review engineer, Sewer Department has their own review engineer, so everybody's been reviewing this, and we've been going through comments from everybody and making changes to the plans. Stormwater Committee wanted additional test pits dug out on the site, so we went out with the health agent and dug groundwater determined test pits and soil analysis test pits in all the drainage basins to make sure our assumptions, not assumptions, but our calculations for infiltration rates and water tables and everything would be adequate. So we did that a few months ago. Spent a few days out there digging additional holes. Got all those surveyed, located with elevations, and adjusted our calculations as necessary based on all the information gathered from those test pits. So our last revisions, we had not too many comments, probably about 15 to 20 comments left over from green affiliates that we've addressed. Most of them were, as you can expect with the plan set this large, were plan corrections, small things, changing notes here and there, pipe slope, invert line here and there, so cleaning the plans up. There wasn't really any big changes to the drainage system and things like that. And with the additional test pits that we dug, that cleared up some of their comments as well. So as I said, we're moving forward with all the review engineers and are waiting to hear back from everybody on our latest plan set revisions to see where we need to go from there. So I don't know if the board had any additional comments or questions on where we're at or the plans in general.
None at this time, sir.
None here.
Waiting to hear back from peer review.
Yep. Should be soon, I would assume.
No timeline on that.
No. But he's actually been, very expeditious in his reviews and everything, so I'm expecting his comments from Green to be back shortly. So once we get that, we can address his comments, and hopefully everybody else's additional comments will be able to be in around the same time.
Our attorney is on Zoom. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So, like everyone else, we'll kind of see what the peer review yields. My only comment from a legal perspective is that with respect to Mr. Glass's comment on not needing a special permit, that, I've maintained clearly from the beginning that that was not covered in the original settlement, nor could it have been, because there was never an original application. To the extent there was any ambiguity on that, back in April, Carrie was able to uncover some original files that were not particularly easy to find, I think, and she actually provided those files to Mr. Glass, or provided an opportunity to review them. Included among those files were some minutes from the discussions of the planning board, both with Attorney Bobrowski, who was representing the planning board, and Attorney Hanyon, who was representing the applicant. Those minutes made it crystal clear that everyone said, hey, there's still a special permit out there. This doesn't have anything to do with the special permit. The settlement was about subdivision. Yes, the settlement did result in saying how many units they could apply for, but it did not grant a special permit. And it's for those reasons that we've suggested throughout this, that they need to provide a yield plan that shows what this would look like conventionally, not for the purpose of demonstrating how many lots they could do, because that appears fixed by the settlement, but to see whether or not the planning board may prefer a conventional plan to this particular plan, and to help inform them as they review this and either approve with conditions or deny it. But it was clear that the parties understood at that time that all of the board's discretion under the special permit authority remained in existence. So, I just want to state that for the historical record. We do have more records than when you were last together, so I think that's important to note. Otherwise, while I think that it would behoove them to provide a yield plan, and I think there may have been a prior one, which could be helpful, I think we should, look forward to having the experts, do this, peer review so we can be better informed.
Thank you, sir.
If the board would allow, I think the record should probably be clarified on the position I was taking, and I'd like to actually respond to Attorney Tallerman. Our position is that issuance of the special permit is required under the settlement agreement. I think, we put forth a writing over a year ago regarding some of these subject matters, the special permit, the yield plan, to which we've received no written response. It's been a year. I think to the extent this issue was still an open one, we would have anticipated a response. I would take the comments of Attorney Tallerman as to the records that were found to be accurate. We looked at those. I think they made very clear the parties' expectations. And I think, we are today in a position where most of the engineering issues, I think, have generally been resolved or will be resolved. We hadn't gotten a response to these particular legal issues in a year and have moved forward as such. But the notion that we gave up 85 acres of land, 40 of which was, 40 to 50 of which was primo upland, valued at $10 to $15 million, that we reduced the number of homes from 143 to 135, 8 homes, that's a multi-million-dollar subdivision, and that 35 of those homes are now age restricted, meaning we've limited the market we can sell them to. We've taken everyone under the age of 55 and can't sell them houses. That somehow the parties didn't agree that this conservation subdivision should be approved through a special permit, I think is dubious. I think that we would have made all those concessions and somehow the issue of a conservation subdivision being approved was still open, I think is not one that I find particularly credible. And what I'd really like to focus on is how we get to the conclusion of this process. Because I would like to see us working together to refine the conditions of the special permit. And I think it is a unnecessary distraction to somehow engage in this debate, given all these factors and the clear language of the settlement agreement, that a special permit is still in question. I think I really would like to see us focusing on the terms of the permit. And that is something that I think would be consistent with the cooperative theme that is dictated by the settlement agreement itself, which again isn't just a settlement agreement, it's actually a court order. So it has a, I think, heightened level of power in this particular circumstance. And Ed Brennan, who's here with me this evening, Ed, I don't know if you have anything to add to this or if I've hit the...
I think you've touched on it very nicely.
Okay. So
I'd be repetitive if I were to address it.
Okay. So I will, maybe yield the floor back to Attorney Tallerman. I'm sure he has a response, but what I would really like to do is we have engineering comments that we are of course awaiting from Green, and I would share Jason's sentiment. They've been pretty expeditious in their comments, but we would like to focus our attention on what the conditions should look like given the terms of the settlement agreement.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to respond a little bit. This is, first of all, there is no to-do item on the legal side. We made our position very clear. And I also would take umbrage with the notion on the board's behalf that there hasn't been cooperation. Not the board that has continued this hearing month after month. We've been willing to keep it open at their request. As to the legal issues, I cannot fathom a court taking the position that a court order could obviate the need for a special permit application. It just doesn't exist, and there's no jurisdiction. The only thing the court had before them was the subdivision application. They cannot take away the board's original jurisdiction for a special permit. To the extent there's any ambiguity on that question, the parole evidence, which is the minutes by and between counsel, not parties, not laypersons, counsel for each of the parties, clearly said, hey, still got a special permit out there to get. We're just trying to shape up things for the subdivision process. So I don't think it's really worthwhile to have me keep repeating what I've said over and over again. I think the engineers should have at it. I think the board retains all of its jurisdiction to approve or deny a special permit under the laws pertaining to special permits. Maybe they show us a great project, maybe you approve it. You know, they're trying to come up with some engineering stuff. Let's hope that our engineers agree with it, and then the board will consider all of this at the end of the day. But we're here, and it's a special permit proceeding. I think it would behoove them to comply completely with requirements for application for a special permit under these bylaws, including a yield plan, so you would have a comparison. If they don't want to do that, we can't force them to, and you'll just have to take that into consideration when it comes time to close the hearing and make a decision here. I don't see there's much of a need for me to repeat what I've said before, and I'm really confident in the legal posture that we're in.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'd like to respond if I may, because I think we're going to need a record on this. First off, to the extent the board believes I was implying there's been no cooperation by the board, I apologize. I have not felt the board has been cooperative. You have given us continuances. I'd like to point out that many of those continuances were required as a result of delayed comments from other boards, additional requests from other boards, trying our best to compile all the response to the other boards. I've found the members of this board and the staff of this board to generally be pleasant and cooperative to work with. I have to be very candid with you. I think the notion that there's no to-do item on the legal side is completely inaccurate. There was a 20-page letter laying out in extensive detail open issues to which we have not received a response in over a year. So that is a fact.
A letter to us?
A letter to the board. And we have applied for a special permit as a procedural matter. I can't deny that. And we would like that to issue. And I think it's, very important to step back and understand what I'm asking for. It's that we work together cooperatively to implement a settlement agreement that I think made very clear that a special permit needs to issue. I have, not to repeat myself, I don't see how it's possible that any of this took place simply for the act of a subdivision. I don't think that that is a credible position to take, and I want to make a record clear on that, because where we stand now, we think we should be discussing the terms and the conditions of that special permit. I don't want to bore you with legal analysis, but I also want to make the record clear. Parole evidence comes into the record when there's ambiguity in the contract. There is no ambiguity in this contract, and we are on the record as saying we don't see any ambiguity in this contract. So if someone believes that we have not complied with a pertinent law or some type of ordinance that applies, we asked over a year ago to have someone put that in writing, because debating this via Zoom in this meeting right now, a year after the request was submitted and raised prior to that, is putting us in a position where we can't cooperate the way we feel we should to give you a full response. But as I said, we feel very comfortable as to what the parties agreed to and what the outcome was intended to be, given the terms of the contract on its face. Ed, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I'll put a quick fine point on that. I'm under no obligation, nor is the board, to respond to a self-serving legal memorandum. I've given a legal opinion. You have the legal opinion. I've given it verbally. I've given it in email. The legal opinion exists. My opinion is that they need a special permit. They've applied for one. My opinion is that they should. I think it would behoove them to comply with all the requirements of the special permit process, including providing a yield plan. That's my legal opinion. It hasn't changed since the very first day we opened this public hearing. It's not going to change. And I don't really think that this board needs to hear from me anymore on that. Let's let them present the application as they see fit. If they don't want to provide the information that the board has requested, they don't have to. And that will influence the board's position at the end or not. Maybe they'll knock your socks off with respect to how good this project is. It's up to them. They're obviously trying their best to do that. And I hope they succeed for their sake. If they don't, then you have some special permit authority that you can exercise in due course under Chapter 40A, as well as your special permit bylaws. That's been my opinion. It hasn't changed. I'm not going to spend the town's money to put it in writing any more than I have already.
Respectfully to the board, we've spent probably over $100,000 responding to this. I think it's entirely fair and 100% appropriate and arguably required under the settlement agreement that this position, which is completely contrary to the settlement agreement, and we made very clear, be put forth in writing. Because I think stating these comments in an open meeting and not putting them to paper so that we can respond to them is entirely inappropriate. I think we deserve that. I think we've earned that. I think we've been fair. We've been thorough. I think we have been honest in our approach. I think I've always shared with this board and Attorney Tallerman our position. I think we've supported it with facts and law. And I think it is 100% appropriate that we get a written response to that so that we can respond and give this board the tools that it needs to make a decision.
Disagree. I'll do whatever the board asks me to do, obviously. I think the board knows my position on this. If they feel they're unsure of what my position is, then I'll do whatever the board asks me to do.
Well, let me...
There's no obligation to respond, so I'm not intending to do so unless...
We're not gonna settle any of this tonight, I can see.
I can see, but I want to share...
None of us here are attorneys.
No, I
He's
understand.
our attorney, we listen to him.
He is, but let me be clear on something. This board does have a duty to cooperate under the settlement agreement, and I believe, as we've interacted, you guys have always been pleasant. I think the notion that the board, or the counsel for the board, is advising a position that we believe is completely contrary to the language of the contract, under the terms of, just as a matter of good faith and fair dealing to move this project forward, should be put forth in writing so we can respond to that. I think that that duty is heightened when you have a written agreement that calls for cooperation to implement the terms of that settlement agreement. I don't think the notion that we have to shadow box on this issue, I have no idea what the legal basis is for Attorney Tallerman's position, none whatsoever.
I think I've been pretty clear on the legal position here. Again, I don't think that anyone on the board side is being uncooperative. I think this board's been really cooperative, granting, 8, 9, 10 continuances, working with you, arranging peer review, digging through files, providing you with plans, showing up month after month to give the continuances. I think there's been great cooperation. I endorse Mr. Glass's efforts. You're making a great effort. We disagree on a legal position. I think that disagreement is clear. It's been stated many times what that is. I think you are a smart attorney. Mr. Brennan is a very good attorney. I've known him for a long time. I think everyone understands my position here. I'm not going to put it in writing unless directed to do so.
I believe it will be appropriate to have his response in writing. That's your decision.
We'll discuss that.
I would ask if the board would allow that we be placed on the next agenda, on the agenda for the board's next meeting, so we can follow up to the engineering comments, if any, and these.
How does our next agenda look, Carrie?
Right now, we have Wellington Acres Homeowners Association matter.
Should be able to fit you in.
I appreciate that. We also have the submission that we provided recently. To the extent there are any responses to that, we would welcome those.
Okay. The only thing, and I talked to you the other day at the sewer meeting, and I asked you about water. You still don't have water, you don't know where you're getting water, right?
Well, yes, we had that discussion. No, I would say we don't know where we're getting water. As I said to you then, and I'll say again now, we're comfortable that we can get the water from North Dayton Fire District. We think it can be worked out. We'll continue working with them.
I talked with these people.
As have I.
Okay.
And it may be, we would not shut down a conversation with Dayton Water if they were interested in providing the water, which is what I also shared with you. But we don't perceive water as being, and if the permit needed to be issued conditional upon water, we would certainly welcome that discussion so long as it meets legal scrutiny.
Well, without water, you can't build houses, right? So everybody I talk to says they don't have water for you. That's for another day, maybe?
I wouldn't waste your time if I thought that we weren't going to be able to get the water. We feel that we have the ability to access the water. However, we recognize there's still work to be done with the North Dayton Fire District.
If you can't get the water, then you are wasting our time, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, well, we're also spending our time and our money, so
Right.
we probably all have better things to do than waste our time. But yes, we'll continue working with the North Dayton Fire District, and we believe jurisdictionally and infrastructure-wise, they can provide the water.
Okay, thank you.
No, the infrastructure does need to
Do
be.
you have anything else for tonight, sir?
I imagine if members of the public have comments.
Yeah, I'm
we
gonna
can-
open this
yeah,
up
yeah.
for public input now. Mrs. Goulart?
One second.
Thank you.
Nancy Goulart, I'm here tonight as chairman of the Stormwater Committee. A remark was made by Mr. Glass during his initial presentation that there was feedback received from the subcommittee, the Stormwater Committee. Stormwater Committee has not met with anyone to actually take action on the Forest Hills subdivision. So I have a question for Mr. Glass through the board. What feedback does he have and where did it come from?
We received a correspondence from Todd Pilling on the letterhead of the Town of Dayton Board of Health Stormwater Subcommittee dated February 2022, including maybe a dozen or so items which we've all responded to, including the additional test pits that Outback Engineering performed that were monitored by Mr. Pilling as the health agent. That written response is part of the January 9th, 2023 submission, a copy of which was provided to Mr. Pilling and the office manager for the Stormwater, or the Board of Health.
Thank you. The work that Mr. Pilling did was preliminary to any work that would come before the Stormwater Committee. I will restate, this subdivision has not come before the Stormwater Committee. As you know, you're a member of the committee. There has to be preliminary work done, and yes, Mr. Pilling requested test pits and things like that. He will present his findings and his information and probably whatever's in that document to the Stormwater Committee. Until there is an agenda item, this has not come before the Stormwater Committee. I take nothing away from the work that Mr. Pilling did because it's preliminary. I'm sure it's accurate. But until we sit down and discuss this, it hasn't happened. Having to meet with the Stormwater Committee, the full Stormwater Committee, at a posted public meeting will occur when they ask. Now, Mr. Glass has come early on to some meetings, but we weren't able to do anything because he had other committees, boards to come before. And I have another question for Mr. Glass through the board. What's the status of this project with the City of Taunton Conservation Commission?
So I think responding to something that you're raising that I've said before, just again to be clear, and it's in my written response, the jurisdictional role of the Stormwater Subcommittee remains ambiguous to us. However, we've said and will continue to say, to the extent we need to submit anything formally to the Stormwater Subcommittee, we of course will. We presented to you guys informally in the spirit of working together cooperatively. We responded to all the comments of Mr. Pilling and spent a great deal of money and time to perform those test pits in the response and incorporated the findings of those into the subdivision plan and the compiled response in front of you. As for Taunton, we are going before Taunton's Concom the 16th in approximately 2 weeks. We are not going to ask them to close that hearing. We have said to them from the beginning our intention is to resolve the components of this project that exist primarily in Dayton and come to them and continue to keep them updated as to that portion of the project, and when appropriate, ask them to close, but we will not be asking them to close on the 16th. The Dayton Conservation Commission and the Taunton Conservation Commission have the same peer review engineer, Beta Group, and they have compiled all of their responses, both those for Dayton and for Taunton, into their filing. And a copy of their comments as well as our responses provided by Outback Engineering and LEC Environmental are included in the January 9th submission, which this board received, as did the Taunton Conservation Commission.
So the status of the last meeting I attended and ongoing communications with the Conservation Commission in the city has been that there have been continuances. And the Taunton Conservation Commission has made it very, very clear. Get yourself straightened out in Dayton before you come back here. Because when I have spoken to the Conservation Commission in Taunton, I said to him, this project has not come before the Dayton Stormwater Committee. I don't know how you, Taunton Conservation Commission, can approve a stormwater basin in the city of Taunton, which will drain water from the town of Dayton, when the town of Dayton Stormwater Committee has not said, that's okay with us. We have concerns about water going into another community, just like we would if it were going on to adjacent property. It just so happens it's going into a municipality. And it may be fine, but again, this this project has got to come before the Stormwater Committee, regardless of his opinion. As you know, even though a 40B does not have to be approved as far as a stormwater committee, the zoning board in this town has been very clear on the last 40B, the one that's under approval. And the developer agreed, we want to hear what the Stormwater Committee in Dayton has to say. We knew they didn't have to take all our recommendations, but we also put on file written responses that expressed all the concerns we had. And some of that information, at least the letters that were written, were filed as part of the initial information. That information is still on file now that we have a pending appeal. So to have a developer say, I don't think it's relevant, I said from day one, the first time Mr. Glass came, it is relevant, and you need to come before the Stormwater Committee. And I think other boards and commissions have also said, you need to go to Stormwater, because we work together and each board wants to know what's happening. So I will say again, the work Mr. Pilling did, I'm sure, is professional and accurate. It's preliminary, and it will come before the Stormwater Committee once this development is presented for us to hear it. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you.
We have not made a decision. You would have been part of the vote.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Get anybody? Get anything? Dave?
Yeah, I'll come up. Thank you. Hi, Dave Marvel, 102 Forest Street, North Dayton. I know it's tough. The guy wants to build a house. He's owned the land all this time. He's trying to settle. But I look at a couple things. The wildlife in the back, I always enjoyed for the last 35 years. My grandchildren loves coming over and seeing wild turkeys fly in the back. Once in a while we see deer. But it's shrinking. You know, we got developers coming in. They want to build houses. I understand that. The other impact I'm trying to understand too is what's going to happen with our schools. Now, we have 100 houses coming in, say 2 kids, there's 200 more kids coming in. We still have trailers for classrooms. So how are we going to get these kids into schools here in North Dayton or Dayton itself? The other thing I want to talk about, safety on the road. I live on Forest Street. We posted a 35-mile zoning traffic zone, but they still travel up and down, disregarding the speed limit, and now we're going to add more traffic. I just can't understand that. That Forest Street used to be a nice walk for people to walk there, children in carriages or take a casual walk. Now you have to be a little bit on the protective side to make sure a car's not going to run you down. The other thing I want to talk about too is probably already discussed, but what about the water pressure? If there was a fire in the new district where the house is going to be, and we had another fire down in Forest Street, do we have enough water pressure to take care of that? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Speak now. If I have, hold your peace. I would like to say one more thing. A lot of the residents was unaware of the meeting tonight. There's been, a lot of meetings postponed. It's like, are they having a meeting or aren't they having a meeting? More than likely, they're not having a meeting, so. I expect our next meeting to be a little more publicized and a lot more residents will be here.
That's great. That's fine with us. I just, it's a perfect introduction to what I wanted to say, and I'm not sure many people care, but I think it's important that people understand. Mr. Talon made the comment of the numerous continuances, and I made reference as to why. I just think it's important for everyone to understand here, we are, notwithstanding the fact that this is one town, having this project reviewed by 5 different peer review engineers. So we have requested in numerous instances that groups use the same peer engineering review firms. In fact, Green, and that was denied. So it has been very burdensome and very expensive to compile the oftentimes, or I should say often, but expectedly inconsistent comments that have been provided, as well as the sheer magnitude of them. So while I understand that there may be a perception of delay, I think it's very important as to why. You know, that settlement agreement says that the planning board, not DI Trust, the planning board thought there was $3,000 in peer review engineering fees here. We are, probably, into the 6-figure range on trying to get this thing done. So I just think, I think some of you understand that, but I want to make sure everyone understands that. And as for next month's, or next week's, 2 weeks from now, the meeting, we welcome more members of the public being here and sharing whatever information we can. I would also add, as I've shared with Mr. Marvel, we're happy if anyone reaches out or has questions. I think our email information are on the submissions. If anyone wants to email us, we can email them copies of the plans. We're happy to talk to people if they have questions. I believe Mrs. Easterday posted copies of the letters and the updated revised plans online. So we don't expect people to always be happy, but we want to do our best to, be good neighbors, talk to people about the project, answer questions to the extent we can, and, we'll keep doing that.
Thank you, sir.
You calling me a good neighbor? Yes, sir. Have a good day, guys.
Anyone else? Nobody else? How about my colleagues? Anybody got anything to say?
No comments.
No comments? No comments? Okay, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
No, you don't wanna close the
No?
public hearing?
No, continue. Continue.
No, I do have one public input email
Okay,
to
go
read
ahead.
into record.
Oh, is anybody on Zoom? I didn't look.
Mr. O'Connor?
There, do you want me to read first and then I'll?
Yeah, is anybody on Zoom who have anything to say? Guess not. How about Jay? You got anything else, Jay?
So the only thing I wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, is with respect to the water service. I don't take a position as to whether or not water is available or not available. They're either going to demonstrate that or they're not. The only thing I'm going to add to that is you have the right, if you want, to condition, if you're going to condition an approval, condition it on them gaining water service. However, I will note that the adequacy of utilities, including water service specifically, is referenced in the town's special permit criteria. So they're showing that they have water service can be taken into consideration in the special permit criteria. Now, we're going to be at this for a little while in some subsequent hearings, so hopefully that they can resolve this issue around the water service, because I think it would help inform the board.
Ready for me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I received an email on Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, from David and Karen O'Connor, Dayton residents of 237 Forest Street, North Dayton. To the members of the Dayton Planning Board, I am sure the board is aware that the North Dayton Fire District only extends 300 feet northwest of Forest Street, and nearly all of the proposed Forest Hills Estates is not in the district. At the last Concom meeting, the applicant stated they would get the water for their project from the district. From the district rules and regulations, 5.2 meter, all domestic services shall be metered. Residential property shall be furnished with a meter for each individual unit. Commercial property shall be furnished with a single meter for each building or for each unit within the building that is under separate ownership. In no case shall a single meter serve multiple residential units or commercial units under separate ownership. Item number 3, I keep hearing from Mr. Glass about the settlement agreement. We were at the planning board meeting when the applicant forgive me, Yvonne Nadu Development Company, Inc. was turned down and it ended that day. It was never brought up again to the public. If there was a backdoor deal agreement, I would like a copy of it, and I want the names involved in this deal. Number 4, we also keep hearing the word grandfathered over and over again. Well, we were here at 237 Forest Street before DI Trust got a hold of 236 Forest Street, residential agricultural house lot. There is no road across from our home to make our house a T intersection, and we are grandfathered before any of their grandfathering. DI Trust purchased the house across the street in November of 1994 from Linda Bierce Hobson. We were there in January of 1992. We were there first with no access road via 236 Forest Street proposed. Thank you, David and Karen O'Connor. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to continue to the, February, what's the date again?
February,
15th,
February 15th.
February 15th meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's 3 ayes.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minute meetings from January 18th, 2022.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any correspondence, Gary?
None.
No correspondence. Do we have any public input? Public input. Lenny had his hand up first.
Leonard Hall, 760 Main Street, Dayton. Also member of the Dayton Board of Selectmen. Last year at town meeting, unfortunately, Mr. Woods, your request failed or was continued because it was not worded correctly. This is January. At that meeting, the town promised to revisit the raise as you so wish. You have 2 ways to get an article on the warrant. One is to create one within your board, working with FinCom and the Board of Selectmen. The other is a petition on how you would like to see it worded and go through this signature process. I mention this now because it is January, and to get the wordage correct and the numbers correct gives you plenty of time, because unfortunately, the verbiage was put together at the last minute the last time, and there were mistakes made. And it wasn't thought through carefully, and there was confusion on the town floor, if you remember. So I heard this evening, Mr. Cunha and Mr. Higgins are also in support of a raise. Whether it'll be as hefty as what you're asking, I don't know.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
But you're correct, and now's the time to work on the language.
We can apply for it, Concom can shoot it down, we can ask for it on town meeting floor.
Correct. But I would suggest start now, not wait until
That's why I threw that
May.
number out there.
May to try to put something together for June. Because we want to run it, you might want to, or the town run it by legal counsel to make sure it's correct. Not just from the legal standpoint, but it's all inclusive. Or in the case of last time, not including employees who are covered under other
We're
agreements.
not talking about no other employees.
Correct.
Just us.
Well, your article will include those who fit within the class similar to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
Just to follow up with what Selectman Hull said, the Board of Assessors had its budget meeting, initial budget meeting today, and we also put in a 2% increase for the Board of Assessors. This is the first run of the budget. This is what will be submitted to meet the deadline, and obviously, everything in the budget is up for discussion, including the increase. So anyhow, I just wanted you to know, we put that in for us because the feeling was that the boards and commissions, based on what happened and the fact that there haven't been any increases for a number of years, we felt that it was appropriate. So I just wanted you to know
Thank you,
that
thank you.
the assessors have done
You
something.
know I know how it works, right?
So, yes, I know.
Yeah, okay.
So what I wanted to give you was,
43 bucks.
oh,
Thank you.
no. We're gonna take up a special collection. This article appeared in the Newport Daily News, and I had hoped to get down there to see this when it was under construction from a stormwater standpoint.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, Mr. Walker got back to me, and the article appeared after they finished the project. But this deals with both stormwater management for small parks and providing water for trees and things. So, Mr. Ferry was aware of this system, and what he said to me was, this wouldn't be appropriate for anything stormwater's working on right now, but you should give a copy to the planning board so that down the road, this may be something that when they're dealing with developers as far as open space and leaving green areas, or if there's a problem area, this type of system, which is both a drainage and a planting system to water trees, might be effective. So I got some extras, I'll leave them with Kerry.
Thank you.
But that's what it's about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last call, Phyllis. Sean? You're very quiet, Sean. Okay. All set. Anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Good night, Cable.